Source Nation, join us now for Family Mix Mondays with licensed professional counselor Jaketra Bryant. Tune in as Jaketra shows the different dynamics that make up family. Whether you represent the nuclear family, single parent, extended, grandparent, or blended family, Jaketra has tips and advice designed to strengthen your family structure. Source Nation, here is your host, Jaketra Bryant. Source Nation, join us now for Family Mix Mondays with licensed professional counselor Jaketra Bryant. Tune in as Jaketra shows the different dynamics that make up family. Whether you represent the nuclear family, single parent, extended, grandparent, or blended family, Jaketra has tips and advice designed to strengthen your family structure. Source Nation, here is your host, Jaketra Bryant.
Good evening, Source Nation. I am your host, Jaketra Bryant, and I want to welcome you to Family Mix Mondays, which is the show where I strive to break generational cycles off of our families by restoring them back to something good, with talking about the things that are often in our head that we most often dare to come out and talk with our families. And so this month is no different. As I strive to break these generational cycles and have these discussions that we need to have to rebuild our families and reconnect us, then we are going to do that just tonight. As I continue my series of positive parenting, the role a parent plays is so important. Oh, my goodness, it's so important. And so I think sometimes we may think about, well, I know I did. I thought like reading books like What to Expect When Expecting was just going to give me everything I needed, except it didn't. It just told me exactly what stage my son was in when he was in my belly. It told me nothing about what this little kid was going to be like. It told me nothing that he was going to go throw tantrums. It didn't tell me that, oh, my goodness, I was going to have to come to parent-teacher conferences. It didn't tell me that everything I did, from whom I dated to if I dated to how I show love to if I show love, that it was going to affect this little kid. Yes, all of that does. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine this gift that we're given to be parents and actually have to be responsible for what happens with them? I think sometimes we may have this vision in our head. At least I know I've heard people say this. They have this vision. I want a wife, a kid, a husband, and I want this white picket fence, and I want my dog, and I want all these nice things, and I want to be CEO of this company. And ta-da, it's here. Only not to include that you can't just place people in your lives and not think that they'll be impacted by whom you are if your character isn't right, or if you're broken, or if maybe you didn't have that experience of what love and a family looks like in a healthy state. Like, when we place these people in our lives, they're here, and we're responsible for what happens to them during the time that they're under our wings as parents. And so I really wanted this series to focus on that. I wanted this series to focus on the role that we play as parents and getting ourselves healthy, getting our mindset healthy, getting our physical healthy, getting our language healthy, so that as we begin to parent, we can parent from a state of health, a state of good thinking, a state of good intentions, a state of good character, because I believe that that fruit produces out of that. And so we're going to have that conversation today, and we're going to talk to a psychologist today who has been doing her thing and who strives to promote something so similar when it comes to the parent's role. And so before we bring her on and just continue the conversation of the positive parenting and the role that parents play, I want to stop and thank our sponsors: Zulina Health, Wellness, and Fitness, Paper to Film Productions, Revolution Meals, Renovations, Meet My Types Matchmaking, Blend to Blend Juice Bar Boutique, Urban Grandstand Digital, and New Covenant Praise Worship Center. And after the break, we'll have my guest.
Source Nation, stay tuned. You're listening live to Family Mix Mondays with your host, Jaketra Bryant.
Source Radio Network is just one of the many platforms that is used to fulfill dreams of our listeners and create a purpose that will impact the lives of our communities, cities, and the world. It is often said that great things will happen when a group of driven people work together to accomplish one goal. We're giving people the opportunity to have a voice, translate words that haven't been heard, and paint pictures that no one has seen. Source Radio Network is fueling your life's purpose. How can you listen? www.blogtalkradio.com/Source Radio.
Welcome back, Source Nation. You're listening live to Family Mix Mondays with your host, Jaketra Bryant.
Welcome back, Source Nation. Again, I'm your host, Jaketra Bryant, and we are continuing our series of positive parenting. We are going to have a really great discussion about the role that we play, as I stated before the break. And so I just want you to go and grab some other Source Nation family members, because this is something that you want to make sure that everyone that has hands and eyes on your child will be a part of this discussion. And so I have guest Dr. Satira Streeter-Corbett, and she is the Executive Director and Clinical Psychologist at Ascensions, Ascensions Psychological and Community Services, which serves the Washington, D.C. community through quality therapeutic services and social initiatives. She is also the wife of retired Master Sergeant Kevin and a mother of sons Kai and Cole. Their ages 8 and 7. And she's going to shine some light today and talk about an event that's coming up and her perspective on what it looks like when parents model positive behavior and what it looks like when they don't. And so we have our guest. So Dr. Streeter, hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Good, thank you. I don't know what's up with you with that name.
Yeah, that's fine. It's Ascensions Psychological and Community Services, and that's because our mission is to help our clients ascend to the next level, to use all the things that they've gone through as lessons and be able to move up from there.
Man, that is great. Like, I love that. I love the title of it, and I love it when it has so much, like, in-depth meaning with it. And so tell Source Nation more about you and just any new things you got going on. I know we'll go more into detail about that particular event, but just tell Source Nation just more about you.
Okay, so I'm a clinical psychologist. I received my doctorate degree back in 2001, so I've been doing this now for about 17 years. I have been blessed to open a practice where we serve our African-American community exclusively, providing the culturally relevant services that we need that oftentimes can't be delivered by people who have not had the experiences that we've had as African-American people. So it's myself, and there are 4 other psychologists that work with me, and we have a community office right in Anacostia, which is in the southeast side of D.C. So we provide therapy. We do a lot of workshops and psychoeducation. And it really is about empowering our clients, because I tell them, regardless of me being a psychologist for all these years, I'm not the expert in the room. They are, because I feel like the Creator gives us everything we need to work through our stuff. But sometimes we just get stuck, so I'm here to help people get unstuck.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Everything was going through my head as you were talking, Dr. Streeter-Corbett. So one being, servicing only African-American with that and building that community up, I think that's really good. I think sometimes people may overlook the fact that there are communities, and different communities like first-generational students or international or African-American, like those particular people have different backgrounds and what that background looks like for their situation and how to actually empower them there. And so I'm glad that that's something that you saw fit to actually tailor. I love that.
Oh,
I guess with looking at that particular population, and let's look at, say, the women, what are some of the common trends that you see that might affect the way they parent based on maybe some background, some common backgrounds that you may have heard from them, background experiences?
So unfortunately, I feel like one of the biggest commonalities that we have as Black women and Black people, period, of course, is a history of trauma. So when we think about trauma, a lot of times people just think about, trauma is just, maybe a physical abuse situation. But again, trauma can be so many things. It could be that physical abuse. It could be the sexual abuse, verbal abuse. It could be experiencing a fire when you're growing up, or having a parent or someone close to you that's addicted to drugs, or having a parent away in prison, or not having a relationship with your father. And even the whole experience of growing up in poverty is traumatic in and of itself, in terms of how we're treated when we're poor, in terms of the experience with going down to social services and having food stamps, and how our schools are oftentimes not as good, and our stores are, they don't have as fresh produce, and things are rotten, and there are rats and mice and all kinds of things. So the trauma really does sometimes inform our parenting, because we're parenting from a place where we have healing within us that hasn't happened yet. So we're passing down our sometimes unhealthy coping skills to our children, and of course they pass it down to theirs. So it's just those generations of trauma and not having the healing that we need and deserve.
Speaking of trauma, as you were talking, I couldn't help but to think back and realize that I don't even think I knew what the word trauma meant, let alone understood how I could be affected by it. Growing up in a black community, and going to a predominantly white school, but just with my mom and my dad, socioeconomic, and the history that they've had, I didn't think I never knew that I experienced like trauma just based on what the environment was for me at the house. And I didn't come into that term until I became a therapist, and until I later started studying. So how do you think we can talk to our parents in the black communities about, like, maybe trying to figure out if they've experienced some trauma that's affecting the way they parent?
Well, it's again, I feel like for us, it's not if we've experienced the trauma, it's when and what the trauma was,
and
recognizing the impact of the trauma and when it happened and how does it still play out in our life. And to let people know that it is trauma, and it's okay to recognize, like we're always taught, especially as black women, you kind of suck it up and you walk it off and you get over it and all that type of stuff. But letting women know, no, you've been hurt, and it's okay to recognize you've been hurt and take some steps to healing. And if those steps mean, it doesn't always mean therapy, but it could mean therapy. It could mean journaling. It could mean cutting some people off out of your life that don't need to be there. All those steps that we need to take so that we can make sure we're whole, so that we can raise whole children.
Right. That's such a good point. You're right. Like, we all have it. And so with that discovery of recognizing that we all have it, prior to just even coming to a place of counseling, I am so pro-counseling, not only because I am a therapist, but because I feel there's healing in talking and not silence. And I think if that's going to be in the counseling setting, if that's going to be a life coach, it's just talk. Mm-hmm. And so with that journey of kind of looking back at the experiences that a person has had, or moms particular, we'll stay with moms for a moment, have had particular, like with their maybe possible background of trauma, what would some negative effects of, say, trauma in witnessing an abusive home look like for how a person might parent?
So I think one thing that stands out to me that I'm rather passionate about is how we discipline our children. Oftentimes we get the terms discipline and punishment confused. So punishment is, those things that we do to hurt our children, to get them to, pay for their mistakes and all of that, whereas discipline comes from the Latin word, which is to teach. And I'm of the mindset that I don't need to punish my 6-year-old and my 8-year-old. I need to teach them how to do things. A lot of times we look at our children with adult eyes and don't realize, hey, this kid has been on this earth for 5 years or 4 years. Mm-hmm. How am I having all these expectations for him to do this, this, and this, and this, and therefore I'm going off and I'm whipping him and I'm screaming and yelling and cursing, when he really just doesn't have the life experiences to really completely process, his little mistakes and his challenges and all that, and to do better. So we basically say, well, my mom beat me and my mom yelled at me, and this is how I was raised, so this is what I'm going to do, and not giving any thought about how we're parenting. And another area I also feel like it shows up with is the partners that we choose for our life. Oftentimes, if we've been broken and if we've had abusive relationships, or if dad wasn't in the home, or a number of things, we may have issues with self-esteem. We may have issues with loving ourselves. So we let these people in our life that don't know how to treat us, that don't know how to love us, and therefore we let these people in our children's life, whether it's as, father or stepfather or, whatever it is, but we surround them by unhealthy people because we don't know how to really determine what's healthy for us, and we also think that our children aren't impacted by seeing us in these negative relationships and abusive relationships. So I think that's another major way that trauma plays out in our child rearing.
That's good. That's good. And you're right. I don't think a lot of people see that. I don't think they see the connection. Before you came on, I was telling our Source Nation family that, like, we have this vision in our head, like, oh, I want a husband, I want a wife, I want this child, I want this life fence, I want this dog. And then, like, we don't really consider, like, that here's another person that we're responsible to make sure that they are raised up in a way that God sees pleasing, or that God sees as who they are. And we kind of just like, well, this is just on pretty much my checklist. This is what's next, right? Like, I'm a woman, so I need to, like, get married and have a child. And so not seeing the impact that we as parents have on that child if we're not whole or healed or have reflected on some stuff. And that's a really excellent point. So that's even choosing the partners. We have this vision in our head, but not really knowing, did I even know love when I was a kid? Did I even see a healthy experience as a kid? So how am I going to choose a mate?
Right. That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. And so, but yeah, I love the point where you mentioned about discipline. And so I know earlier, Dr. Corbett Streeter, you sent me a flyer about, like, think before you spank, and I'm looking over, and I really love that. And you mentioned discipline, so I want you to tell some of the Source Nation about, like, that, like, some of the signs in there, because you mentioned about discipline and what that looks like in teaching, and kind of how can they understand that, like, oh my goodness, I am tipping over to something that I experienced, and I've moved from teaching to something that can really actually scar my child and ruin that relationship that we might have.
Right. And I think when and it's extremely controversial, because at the end of the day, when we look at the numbers, about 70% of the world spank their children, right? But spank is a nice word and whoop is a nice word, but basically that's saying 70% of parents hit their children. And again, we teach our children, you don't hit people when you're mad, keep your hands to yourself. But then you have this full-grown person, this most likely, 3 or 4 times bigger and stronger than this child, taking their hand or their belt or whatever and striking them with it and calling that, again, discipline. And when we think about, and I know there's the whole the biblical thing, so spare the child, spare the rod, spoil the child, and all of that. But again, when we even think about that, when you look at the Bible and it says, thy rod, thy staff, they comfort me. So I just don't see, the thing that comforts me as being the thing that you use to beat me with. So I think people put whatever twist they do on their wanting to do what has always been done. Because, again, that's the easiest thing to do. You make me mad, I reach out and I pop you and I get you to be quiet or whatever. But even if you think back to slavery, why were slaves beat? They were beat to break them. You think about Roots in the opening scenes of how, the slave master kept beating, quote unquote, Toby to get him to submit. In 2018, do we really want to get submissive children, and do we really want to break our children and break their spirits? No. We need our children to be intellectually sound, so we need them not to use physical scare tactics to get them to do what we want them to do, but we need to be using, intellectual. How can we get the child to actually really get it of what they're doing, of what we're trying to, the message or the teaching or the lesson that we're trying to portray? Is the best thing that we can do with all of this knowledge we have in our head from being whatever age we are, is our best resort to hit them, to get them to do what we want them to do. I just feel like I'm smarter than my kids for now. And with me being smarter than them, I feel like I should be able to figure out something else to do to get them to do what I need them to do.
That's a really good point. Like, I could know, not that I agree with the statement, but remember the statement that used to come out, like, well, not come out, but parents would be like, well, I got spanked and I turned out just fine. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like, well, did you? And I think that goes back to kind of the statement that you made earlier about, like, this trauma that we've experienced within our Black community and not even knowing that, like, the level of impact it has from socioeconomics to, like, comments to lowering self-esteem to relationship factors to love to all that stuff and not knowing. And so I think it goes back to those statements like that, well, I got spanked and I turned out just fine.
Right. And again, it goes back to us normalizing some stuff that's just simply not normal. In order to cope with things, we normalize them. Like it's been normalized not to have dad in the home. Like I was in front of a judge one time, and she literally said, well, why is it such a big deal? Her dad's not there. Most Black children don't have their dad in the house. And I was horrified. But society has absolutely normalized and therefore made us normalize some things that we have to go through that just aren't normal. And I feel like spanking or hitting our children is one of those things that have been normalized and accepted without us really putting thought into what are the other things that we can do and what's the ultimate message that we send. Because, again, what is the first thing the parents say? Oh, this hurts me more than it hurts you. Mm-hmm. No, not really. No, this actually physically hurts me. And then, with my area where I work, 65% of the children in foster care come from, D.C. is divided in 8 wards. So Ward 8, the one ward, 65% of all of the children in foster care come from this one ward. In a lot of those cases, some of them are neglect, and some of them are quote-unquote physical abuse. And no one, I think, whoops their children or hits their children with the intention of actually hurting them badly. But, like, where is the physics to spanking? Like, how do you decide that if you bring your hand up, 1 foot away from your child, and then you use this type of force, then you'll deliver just enough pain to let them get it? No, that's not what happens. People don't do these calculations. Right. Typically, when somebody is spanking their child, it's because the child is either talked back or the child is disobeyed a couple of times or whatever. So the parent themselves is already a little frustrated. So they're spanking, but when do they stop? When do they decide enough is enough? When do they decide this hurts and this doesn't hurt? And it ends up being a situation, the child ends up with some bruises because, again, most of us don't have these medical degrees to say how much is going to, how much is too much to bruise my child. They end up with bruises. They go to school. School sees the bruises. They have to make the call. Next thing you know, this child is being removed from your home because you were, quote-unquote, disciplining them. But I just feel like if I can empower my community with better ways to discipline, then maybe they won't end up in the system. As a child that grew up in foster care, I know that once the system takes away your child, it's almost impossible. Not impossible, but it's pretty hard to get your child back. Yeah. So that's what we try to do now is empower parents so that they're not losing their children to the system, so they're not losing their children to the street and not losing their children to pain and bitterness, because those are issues as well.
Yeah, you're right. That's a lot of good points that you're making. And so I just kept, I think one thing I want to make sure that we teach our Source Nation parents is, since it's all about what we model, and so since it's an instruction that needs to take place when there is time for discipline, maybe perhaps that's something that the parents can actually model themselves when they are when they've made a mistake or when they are trying to fix something that didn't go right. Because usually that's what we're trying to do with an unwanted behavior, right? We're trying to fix it because it didn't go as we wanted to go.
Right.
And so how could parents actually begin themselves modeling some better skills so that may be a way to teach the child when it comes to when you do something unwanted.
Right, and I believe of all the things that I talk about in terms of parenting, and using time out effectively, and using reward systems and all those type of things. There's one thing that goes above and beyond everything else in terms of what we can do as parents to teach our children, and that's just that, modeling. We need to be the people that we want our child to be. So if we, if our child sees us lying, or if our child sees us cussing folks out, or if our child sees us, again, hitting them or hitting other people, or if our child sees us taking things into our body that we don't need to, all of those things, what's the 8-0 adage? People say, oh, do as I say, not as I do. That's never, ever worked. That's never worked. It sounds nice, but it doesn't work. We have to be who we want our children to be. We can't just say, oh, we're going to do whatever. We're going to lie. We're going to cuss. We're going to do all that. But we want our children to do something different. No, our children are looking at us all the time. And if we're not disciplined enough to say, okay, I don't need to do this right now. I don't need to watch, all these videos that have all these curse words and that are degrading women, or I don't need to be with this guy who smokes weed around my kids, or I don't need to be with this woman who does this, this, and that. Our children are going to be, how can we expect them to be disciplined if we can't? So modeling, I think, is the biggest thing we can do as parents to get our kids on the right track.
That's so true. I was on a couple of radio stations back, I think 2 weeks ago, and I gave this story, and it's the same story I'm going to use, where I was discussing my role in traffic. And so I don't have road rage. That's my disclaimer out there. I have a weird way of, saying something to all the cars, but it's not yelling or anything, because as a therapist, I am pretty even and calm with a lot. It takes me to be very, very overwhelmed before I start, yelling. And so, but when I am talking to the cars, I notice that I'm just you, need to be more mindful of the people that are around you and signal. What are you doing? You're not the only people here. These people are so entitled. And I have this whole speech about people being more aware of their spacing and their bodies and just all kind of things. You can tell I teach a lot of mindfulness. And so, all that I'm always talking about. Well, in it, I notice if I'm not saying something, it's just a normal day, and my son's, paying attention to the traffic instead of, his games or just kind of, playing with his Legos. I noticed one day he was like, what are you doing, Carl? Didn't you see us here? You need to be aware that there are cars around you and you're spacing and what that looks like. And so I was just I just look at my face well, I was this little kid done picked up my little whole conversation. And then so even though I'm not yelling, I am still having this full-out discussion about these cars, and it sounds like I'm complaining. And he picks up on that. He really does. And so it's everything. Yep, everything. Everything.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. So the good and the bad. So, again, they'll model your good stuff too. But they'll definitely pick up on the bad.
Yeah. So I think going away from that saying, do as I say, not as I do, it never has worked. It never has worked. I don't know who made that up, but it's never worked. I heard it when I was younger, so I know it's something out there.
Exactly.
But it never has. And I think, even with this, with the role of positive parenting, just really just looking at who we are and what that, not who we are, but who, you're right, what we're modeling, what we want to be and who we want our children to be, and looking at that. And so what would be some practical, maybe tips or practical skills, something that some of the parents can actually start doing to make sure they are indeed modeling something that they would like for their children to reflect on or to model on?
Right. I think the first and most important thing that we have to do is really have a vision for our child. And I don't mean having as specific as a vision to say, oh, I want my child to grow up and have a nurse, be a nurse and move to Atlanta, Georgia, and have 3 kids. No, I think we need to have a vision in terms of I want my child to have healthy relationships. I want them to be able to take care of themselves. I want them to go to college. I want them to pursue a satisfying career. And being able to have that vision for your child and your child's future will help to order your steps in terms of what you do. So, if that's your vision and if you're clear and if you write it down and you paste it on the wall and you're like, this is what I'm trying to do for this child, then you're going to move a little bit different in your child's life. So you're going to, you're going to think about how you talk to them. You're going to think about the experiences that you give him or her. You're going to think about even how you spend your money. So I have this extra $300. Am I going to spend it on a PlayStation, or am I going to spend it on having him to have this extracurricular activity that's going to expose him to different things in the city? So really being intentional about parenting, I feel like, is the first step. There are so many parents who, unfortunately, for various reasons, they tend to parent on autopilot. They just they get up, they go to bed, they get up, feed the kids, go to bed. Like, it's just not really a lot of intentions. And I get it. Oftentimes it's because just we as black people, unfortunately, because of systemic racism and all the things that we haven't been able to get in the society, that a lot is on us. So a lot of our mothers are really doing the best they can in terms of trying to maintain a household and make sure the kids have shoes and food and all that type of thing. But I always encourage parents, even when things are tight and when time is tight and even when you have more than one child, to still take that time out to say, okay, what is it that I want for my child, and am I doing the things that's going to benefit them in the long term, or am I doing temporary fixes for issues and problems?
I think, just going back to your initial statement, having a vision for them, not this whole, I want them to be this football player, I want them to be this lawyer, this doctor, but giving not these titles. I see that often in college. I work for a university, and that's all people, they come in with the expectations of their family members, not even addressing their character or who their character is, none of that stuff. Nothing. Relationships, nothing. It's just focused on doctor, lawyer, all that. That's it. And I think that's a really good point that you made about, your vision for them. I would like to teach them this. I would like them to go and have healthy relationships. I would like them maybe to serve God. I would like all these things. And what does that look like? And begin, modeling there. I think that's a really excellent point. And from a person who hears it in college settings, oh my goodness, yeah, it doesn't happen. I wish it would. I'm waiting on it. They are not teaching their kids from the ground level on. And so important. So what about our dads? I know we focus a lot with our moms and the things that they can be in, but there is a portion of unfortunate reality that we are, there's not a lot of homes that will have the father present, but maybe involved, but not physically present 24/7 or something. How can maybe a role of co-parenting model a healthy relationship?
Right. And I think that is, again, being intentional and putting aside, our bruised feelings and all of that, and really looking to see what's best for the child. And I know that's sometimes hard, especially, again, if you've already been traumatized before this relationship and this relationship has traumatized you more. A lot of times we want to retreat and not really even have much to do with this person, depending on how they've hurt you. But recognizing, is this person a harm to my child? Does this person have benefits that my child could benefit from having this person in their life? And for dads, really not getting caught up in, she says this about me or she says that, but really, moving past that to get where you need to be as a parent and as a father. and doing the things, surrounding yourself with other fathers that are doing the right thing. So whether they're in the home or not, being able to have those conversations and those peer mentors or even some older gentlemen that you're connected with. You're like, okay, this is what I'm going through with this woman and my child. What's your advice? It's just having a good counsel of people around you that are able to feed into you and to help your situation. Not somebody that's just going to go and talk junk too, like, oh, yeah, my baby mother does the same thing and this, and that. But more so, well, yes, I've had that experience, and this is what I did. This is what worked. This is what didn't work. This is what you should consider. Because, again, when we look at the stats, and off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's almost, if a child is in the home of a person who's not their biological father, they are, I believe it's 80% more likely to be sexually abused. So fathers matter. Biological fathers matter. Just being able to be there and be present. Unfortunately, we have an epidemic of our children being sexually abused. And oftentimes it's happening because dad is not able to really be around and have the influence and know what's going on, whether it's because, of prison or whether it's because of the unhealthy relationship with the mother. But dads are important. Dads matter. Dads are protectors. Dads are, who basically lets us know how we should be treated and how we should treat other people. For little boys, they need to have, dad in their life to be able to see, how they can do things. But we have to, of course, get our character right first before we try to teach somebody else.
Mm-hmm. I love that you say that. I am a home of a single mother, and one thing that I knew that was really, really important to, like, a husband came to me, and I choose that character very, very wisely. So my boyfriend is still under observation before he even meets, and it's 9 months in. But mainly it's because we're both watching each other's character. He too has little girls, and I have a little boy, and so, but that was something that we both felt like the role of the parent was very, very important for the legacy that we wanted to create. And so in the meantime, something that I did that I want to make sure I encourage some of the parents is, if you are single, like my son, we are in Big Brothers Big Sisters program. And so I actually was able, you can, with Big Brothers Big Sisters, you can pretty much hand select who you want. It was so weird, actually, kind of weird, but kind of good. But I was able to say that I wanted a black male, and I was able to say an age group, and I was able to say I didn't want him to smoke. I was able to say heterosexual. I was able to say Christian, all that, because I wanted to at least align the values together, so that as he is spending time with him, that I know it's on the values that I instill in my son.
Right.
And so being able to be okay with having a mentor is not weak.
Right.
And so, or having that village, like you said, of other men to talk to, it's not weak. That's smart.
And it's strategic, and it's being intentional. Again, whether you're a single parent or even if you're a married parent like myself, really knowing that, okay, these are the things that we do well. Because, my husband and I, we have a little system going on that we are able to do some things for our children and some influences. But there are some things that we just don't have access to. So we find other people in our lives or other resources or agencies or whatever to give our children that additional exposure of things that we need. So being able to really do an evaluation or do an assessment of what are the strengths that I bring to parenting, what can I do, and what do I have to pour into my child, and what do I have to seek out, to in-source, to have for my child. And that's I think that's extremely important for, again, single parents and married parents, because we can't, we know that it was an African proverb and that we've been doing this whole village thing forever. And, our ancestors weren't lying when they said it takes a village to raise a child. We can't. None of us can do this by ourselves. It takes a whole bunch of folks for us to get this done and get it done right. So, whether that's reaching out through church or through the neighborhood or through the rec center or programs at school, but just really pulling those things in, we need to do this very, very hard job of parenting. It's the hardest job you could ever have, but it's so worth it if we do it right.
I agree. And so I want to be able to make sure we have an opportunity to talk about the event that's on the 28th. And so there's an amazing event that's going on. And so I want you to be able to talk about that. Kind of where's the vision for your event? But could you tell Source Nation about the event that's coming up on the 28th?
Right. So next Saturday, we're so excited. It's called the DC Parenting Empowerment Conference. And what it is my organization, Ascensions Psychological, was partnered with a bigger organization called the Nation's Capital Mothers Group. And this is a group of mothers, professional mothers, who basically come together to do things for our children and then also do things for other people's children in the community as a whole. And we got together and said, what would it be like if we as parents could get with other parents in the community and share resources and share knowledge so we can all learn together, so we can raise our children in this village format. So it's going to be an all-out conference in Southeast D.C., and we have wonderful people partnering with us, like Safe Shores, which is the Child Advocacy Center in D.C., and their executive director, Michelle Booth Cole, is coming in to talk about protecting our children from sexual predators. We have a special section just for fathers called Building Father-Son Relationships from Wakanda to Anacostia, inspirations from the Black Panther. So really talking about what are those father-son relationships and how do we pour into them. We have my brother-in-law is coming in to talk about child safety in the digital age. He runs an organization called Safe Cyber. So he'll, let us all know what are the things that we need to be doing to make sure our children are safe on the internet. And I'm especially excited about our keynote speaker, who will also be doing one of the breakout sessions. But the keynote is going to be by Dr. Stacy Patton, and she is a national speaker. She's a journalist. She's a professor at Morgan. But she wrote a book called Spare the Kids Why Whooping Children Won't Save Black America. And she's an excellent, very passionate speaker about this whole issue of children and corporal punishment and all of the things that it does and the negative impacts this has on children. So the conference is free. It's open to the community. We have a soul food lunch coming with a wonderful caterer. We have lots of giveaways. Tickets to sporting events and all of that, but the main thing that's there are the resources. We have also 20 agencies that have signed up to be there on site to answer questions, and these are resources just for caregivers. And then at the same time, we have children's activities that are going to be going on at the same time so that parents are able to enjoy the conference and not worry about their children being occupied.
That sounds like a wonderful event. It really does, and especially the wide range. I've talked to your brother-in-law, so I definitely see the importance right now with technology moving and educating parents there. And so I think that's such an awesome thing, especially when it comes to, the topic now. That has opened my eyes to discipline. That's something I have to be honest. I am a teacher when I talk to my son, and but I have to be mindful of when I'm angry and taking a moment to be like, oh my goodness, you just talk to me later because I just can't today. And because I am going to say something rude to me, and I know what it's going to do to his character. And so that is something that I've had to be very consciously aware of and just watch that. And so you're absolutely right. So I think that is something that's much needed for resources and modeling.
Right, and that's what the whole focus of that conference. And again, is the Mothers Group, the Nation's Capital Mothers Group, thought that it was important for us to be able to take some time out to think about parenting. Because as I said earlier, oftentimes we parent on autopilot and really sometimes we don't even have the time to take time to think about our next steps. But this mothers group wanted us to all have time to just sit and think just about parenting. So if anyone in the D.C. area is interested in registering for the conference, it's on Eventbrite. And if they look up Parenting Empowerment Conference, they'll be able to pull that up on Eventbrite and register and come on out on next Saturday.
Now, what time is the event?
The event is from 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m.
Okay, good. That I am just man, that gave me a lot to think about. When it comes to the discipline and just the modeling of that, and the forms of trauma. And so before we get out of here, I wanted to ask just a couple more questions when it comes to some practical things that parents can do with their modeling, particularly in the area of maybe their words. Yeah, their words is what's kind of coming to my spirit, their words. How can parents begin to kind of work on maybe the language that they use so that it can, so they may model the empowerment that you speak of when it comes to the goals of your organization or your private practice?
Right. So I think one thing just to keep in mind is that just like physical discipline or physical punishment hurts, words can hurt, and we all know that. Words hurt and words can be long-lasting. So being able to keep that in mind and choose your words carefully. I've seen people talk to their children in ways that they would never talk to another adult or a boss or a supervisor or a boyfriend or anything, but they feel like, these vulnerable children, they just can say anything to them because they're theirs. But I encourage parents to know that these children are extremely impressionable, and their minds are soaking up everything, the positive and the negative. So I would want parents to not take for granted the words that they use and how there's something called complex trauma. We talked about trauma earlier, but complex trauma is trauma that's delivered by the person who's supposed to take care of you. And that, we don't want to create that for our children because that's the worst type of trauma to happen. That, we as protectors are doing things that kids are not, that are not helping the kids to grow. So we have to figure out how to use more praise, how to utilize teachable moments and be able to take the time to say, okay, what you just did, it wasn't cool. This is why it wasn't cool, and this is what I want you to think about when you're in those situations. And even with young kids, it makes a difference to really start talking to them and help them to talk through what they did, what their behavior was, and even ask them, so what do you think your consequence should be? Your teacher just called home for the third time. What do you think? How do you think we can work this out so they can know that they're partners in this life with you, and they're here, that their voice matters. And of course, moms and dads have the final say. But teaching kids now to use their voices, and the whole thing of children should be seen and not heard. Again, we're raising children in the Trump era. They need to be seen and heard more than ever. So just making sure that we know that we're equipping them to deal with the world that we're facing, and making them shut up and making them feel bad or making them feel low. There's a whole bunch of other people that are waiting to do that to your child. You can't join the line.
That's so good, especially like with this whole movement that came about with like the Me Too movement and people speaking up about some stuff. I think like in all of the things that were coming out with like sexual abuse forgiveness and just a lot of that, not even recognizing your voice has so much power. And so I think like if parents can kind of really look at that as a really big picture, there's so many parts to empowering our kids and allowing them to have voice and knowing how powerful it really is. I think it would eliminate a lot of things when it comes to something that's not right about a situation.
Right.
Yes. And so I want to be able to give Source Nation an opportunity to get in touch with you and ask any questions they have later, or maybe if they're in your area, reach out to you. So do you have any information that they can reach out with you after the show?
Absolutely. I can give you my website is www.ascend, ASCEND.org. 2ascend.org is our website. You can reach me at streeter@2ascend.org, and our phone number is 202-889-4344. As I mentioned before, we're in the Anacostia neighborhood of Southeast D.C. We've been there for 14 years, so we'll be there a lot longer. So anyone that's in our community that needs help, know that we're there to help. We see individuals, regardless if they have money or not, or insurance or not, we figure it out because we're here to serve our community. And I think that's the difference between some helping organizations and some that are just kind of that are part of the community. And because we are a part of the community, we don't see ourselves as helping other people. We see ourselves as helping ourselves because these are our people, and this is what we need to do. So, yes, give us a call or look us up, and we are here to serve.
Thank you, Dr. Jaketra Corbett. This has been so insightful for me, and I know that it definitely was insightful for our Source Nation family, our parents that really want to be mindful of what they model, because we really got to change what's happening in today. And you're right, like you said earlier, it's 2018. There's so many things that we really need to, start shifting and moving. And so I do thank you so much for just being a part of the series, and I wish you well on the event that's coming up on the 28th. It is much needed, and I know it's going to be a life changer for a lot of parents that do decide to come. And so thank you again for just being a part of this series.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, Source Nation, that is the voice that you just heard in our interview with Dr. Jaketra Corbett. And so what amazing information that she just gave. And I really hope, parents, that you look in your rearview mirror of family, generational things that have been passed on, and how that has actually impacted you with how you parent. And so also another tip that I picked up on is the way we discipline, that it is a generational thing that is breaking our children down, and we must give them voice and empower them. And so I really hope those are some notes that you took, and you're going to start this week. This is your challenge for the week. Start this week on building your children up and being mindful of who you are and what character you would like for yourself to be, one, who you would like to be, and whom you would like them to be built up as. And so, Source Nation, as always, I can be reached at jabryant1913@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at Jaketra B, and my website, www.b3mentalperformances.com. And thank our sponsors, Zulina Health, Wellness, and Fitness, Paper to Film Productions, Revolution Meals, Renovations, Meet My Types Matchmaking, Blanchard Land Juice Bar Boutique, Urban Grandstand Digital, and New Covenant Praise Worship Center. And we will end our series actually next week of the role of positive parenting. So join me back in next week.
Get at me for beats, yo.